People from all kinds of spiritual traditions often struggle with the balance between spiritual practice and action. Is it enough to just meditate? And if it's not enough, how do we engage in compassionate social action? Reverend Hozan Alan Senauke's work addresses these questions. He is a Buddhist priest, the vice abbot of the Berkeley Zen Center, founder of Clearview Project, an organization that develops Buddhist-based resources for social change in Asia and the US. And their focus is on Burma and ex-untouchable Buddhists in India. He's also on the core faculty of the Apaya Zen Center's chaplaincy training program. And he is a father, musician, activist, and writer, not necessarily in that order. Please welcome Reverend Hozan Alan Senauke. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. So first of all, since this is a conference that focuses on mindfulness, I'd like to encourage everyone to sit up for a moment and straighten your spine. And take 3 mindful breaths, breathing in and out fully. Try that. Now I would encourage you just turn around and look and see who's in the room. See who's near you, see who's in back of the room. See the wonderful people who have taken time on this gorgeous day to be here to honor and learn about the Dharma. And I bow to our monastic sisters and brothers. And I bow to all of the lay practitioners who are also continuing the Dharma. So our panel this afternoon is entitled, it's a panel on social justice, which I think of as the practice of engaged Buddhism. Now, some of you might successfully argue that engaged Buddhism is just Buddhism. It's always been engaged. But I think what we're trying to draw out is the way that our understanding extends from the Buddha's core teachings on the nature of suffering and liberation. And it helps us understand that the suffering we may experience as individuals is shared by whole communities, is shared sometimes by cultures, by groups, and that it may very well have its roots in the way we live in society, whether these are choices that we have made consciously or choices that may have been imposed on us, or choices that just seem like the communal norm in the way that Venerable Lecce was speaking about gender in the last presentation. And in those forms, we can experience suffering and oppression. We may be oppressed, we may be privileged, as some of us are, on the basis of our gender, our race, our ethnicity, our education and class, so on. We might suppose that what the Buddha Dharma teaches is the essential emptiness of all these identities. That may be true, but it doesn't go far enough. Because the idea of emptiness, in my understanding, is that it is empty of a fixed self. It's empty of a fixed identity, and that it implies the fact that we live in a reality that is totally interdependent, and that we co-create the reality that we are living in. So I'm thinking my friend Pankaj Meshram here will speak about the father of modern Buddhism in India, who is an inspiration for me and an inspiration to millions of people in India. His name is Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. And I wanted to quote you something that he wrote that speaks to the topic of this panel. Positively, my social philosophy may be enshrined in 3 words: liberty, equality, and fraternity. Let no one, however, say that I have borrowed my philosophy from the French Revolution. Although actually, he kind of did, in part at least. I have not. My philosophy has its roots in religion and not in political science. I have derived them from the teachings of my master, the Buddha. So this afternoon, in the hour that we have an opportunity to listen to each other across a variety of communities here on this stage. And then you have an opportunity to do this, to go outside and speak with each other, visit the booths, see all of the variety of Buddhist communities that we have just around the plaza. So what the panelists will discuss in their short time this afternoon, here's what they will discuss. They come from a variety of backgrounds and communities and experience. Their work, like my own, incorporates social service, activism, advocacy, meditation, and healing. And I've asked them each 2 simple questions. First question is, what are the particulars of your community and the social work that you do? And the second question is, how does your Buddhist practice support your social work and vision? So I hope we can all attend to these stories, and let me introduce our first speaker. Pankaj Meshram, who's right to my left, is a Buddhist from Nagpur in India. His family converted to Buddhism with Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar in October of 1956. This remarkable conversion ceremony that Dr. Ambedkar both participated in and then officiated in was attended by 500,000 people. They do things on a very intimate scale in India. 500,000 people converted to Buddhism that day, and several million more in the following few days. So Pankaj has been an ardent follower of Dr. Ambedkar's vision of socialism and freedom, with Buddhism as its foundation. He's actively involved in many social projects, and he's currently secretary of the Ambedkar Association of North America. Professionally, Pankaj is a hardware design engineer, and he's the husband and father of 2 sons, living a peaceful and beautiful life in Denver, Colorado. So, Pankaj.
Yeah, thank you very much. Jai Bhim and Namo Buddhaya to everybody. So I just said Jai Bhim, and this is the salutation, honoration we do as a Ambedkarite Buddhist. So Jai Bhim is a victory to Bhim. That's B.R. Ambedkar. His name is Bhimrao Ramji Ambedkar. So I'm very happy to be here and sitting on a very important panel on engaged Buddhism. And I feel privileged that I got an opportunity to come here, represent the organization, the ideas that we bring forth, the ideas that Dr. Ambedkar bring forth, India's Buddhism, new Buddhism that has been reviving in India, it started with Dr. Ambedkar in 1956. And the prophecy that in Buddhism had been around that after 2,500 years, there would be a bodhisattva who would come out and revive the Dhamma wheel. And it is been said, and in honor of Dr. Ambedkar, that he is that bodhisattva who set the wheel of motion in action. And that year, 1956, is the 2,500 years of the revival from the Buddha's Mahaparinibbana. So we all Ambedkarites, at least the families, grew up as seeing Dr. Ambedkar as Bodhisattva Dr. Ambedkar. And the theory and the philosophy that we carry forward is what we learned from him. So we all kind of bring to the table our sufferings. We kind of been with Dr. Ambedkar, at least we meaning the society, in their struggle in the social justice, in the reformation of the society, and coming to the tables from untouchables to the equal levels to everybody else, and achieving that freedom or trying to achieve that freedom. We can talk about how that freedom is achieved, whether it's politically achieved or religiously achieved, socially achieved or not, and political achievement of the liberty, equality, justice and fraternity did happen in India with the independence and acceptance of the Constitution. And guess what? Dr. Ambedkar also happens to be the chief architect of Indian Constitution. And the preamble portion of that Constitution of preamble of Indian Constitution, he talks about we the people, and he says that we take liberty, justice, equality and fraternity as our guiding principles. And those guiding principles been brought into the society politically with the acceptance of Constitution. It is still a lot of work needs to be done to get that acceptance to the economic level, to the social level. That is the struggle, that is the part of movement that we are leading into. That is what we are working towards. Alan mentioned I'm a secretary for Ambedkar Association of North America, and there are a lot of Ambedkar organizations working in India, and that's the basic principle that we are working on. We find these principles are rooted in Buddhism. We find that Buddhism, from Baba Sahib's point of view, is a socially engaged Buddhism. And we'll touch base upon that during our talk. So that is what is our inspiration, that is what is our base to come to the forum and get Buddhism as the platform, as the inspiration, as the source, as the philosophy for us to strive for social justice, that injustice that we see in and around India, and that is what we are working towards. So thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Pankaj. What I'd like to do is just have people sort of speak briefly, and maybe we can actually even have a conversation. That would be remarkable. So the next panelist is Marlai Uch. She's a Cambodian genocide survivor, a learner, an educator, an activist, and a Buddhist practitioner. She's an advocate for social justice and gender equality, and she works particularly in her Cambodian Khmer community. Marlai wears multiple hats in promoting well-being in this community, which includes teaching the Khmer language at the Nagara Dhamma Temple in San Francisco, and preserving and sharing Khmer culture, working to revive the Bhikkhuni movement in the Khmer community, and using the Buddhist teachings to promote harmonious and prosperous society. She has multiple degrees, including a doctorate in educational leadership from San Francisco State University. And we are honored to have you with us here this afternoon. And you can tell us about your community and your work there.
Hi, everybody. How are we doing today? Are we awake? Yes? Yes? All right. Thank you, Alan, for the introduction. Before I jump into the topic, I would like to walk us through a brief history of where I came from. I'm Cambodian, that is also called Khmer. Cambodia is a country, but the official English name for Cambodia is the Kingdom of Cambodia. Cambodia derived from a French word, Campuche, which is a French transliteration of Khmer word, Kampuchea. So as Cambodian, our greatest prize is the Khmer Empire, okay, which is the powerful state in the 1802 to 1432 Common Era. And our greatest, at its peak time, our empire, what we know as today as Cambodia, Thailand, Laos, and southern Vietnam. Our greatest king, our empire king, was Jayavarman VII. So he reigned from 1182 to 1215. So as Cambodia, we were great builders. We built like stunning temples, such as the Angkor Wat, and which is the largest Buddhist temple in the world. Okay, so we have also a great master, and our latest great master is Brahmaha Samrat Gosanan. He basically he was fighting for Buddhism and for human rights since 1978 till his passing of 2007. And so with all these great things, great history, we also have wars, atrocity, genocide. This is what led to the topic of social justice and how we can engage that with Buddhism. So many immigrants came here as voluntarily to improve their lives. However, Cambodians came here as refugees to escape a persecution from the war ended, from the Vietnam War that was ended. Unlike our neighboring country, Cambodia also experienced genocide. During 1975 to 1979, educated people, intellectual people were seen as enemy of the state. As the result, many of them, most of them, were killed. So an estimate of 1.7 to 2.2 million Cambodians were killed during this four years. So as you can see, the refugees came here, they were mostly uneducated. They came here with limited English language, knowledge of the educational system, and a lot of us are left with trauma element here. So most of the Cambodian parents did not know how to advocate for their kids. And oftentimes, the kids are left to struggle on their own. And so as refugee family here living in the US, we live in poor neighborhoods with lack of opportunity, filled with violence sometimes. So therefore, some of our children, got involved in criminal activity. They had no resource to go. This is the reason why Cambodian community or refugee that face deportation today. Okay, so these people have already, in the next first week of July, for example, 50 Cambodians across the US are in danger to be deported to Cambodia. These people were children from the refugee time, and they have served their time. They have jobs, they have businesses, and they have changed to become better, okay? However, they're being deported because they're not US citizens, and their green cards are being stripped away from them. Now, as Buddhists, we all been taught, right, to welcome, to encourage those who have changed for the better. However, deportation does just the opposite. Deportation breaks family and our community apart and put their family in emotional and financial stress for life. All of this started because of the law from 1996, created by the immigration law that started by the bombing of the Oklahoma City in 1995. That was done by an American terrorist. However, this law was punished or are made to punish refugee and immigrant. So this is where social injustice is we're talking about here. So as you can see, people are being affected, being impacted. Our Buddhist temple here, or Buddhist monk, they have been known to be the scholar, to be the intellectual. Temple known to be the resource center, to be a place for, for refuge. So the engagement here that, the monk, the temple community can teach the Cambodian community about deportation, about their rights, about the immigration law, about the impact, what can they do with it. And in addition, temple here are not being used for our community, especially my Cambodian temple. I have 6 Cambodian monks here with us today, and there's a lot of unused resources. We can use that to help those that are impacted so that their family can fight to release their loved ones. And in the US, I'm not religious places, hospital, schools, these have been known to basically a sanctuary for, for their members who have been treated unfairly against their belief. So I too believe that our temple can do the same thing. The US federal government respects other people's belief, and they have not yet invaded the space of other different beliefs. This doesn't mean that we hide them from the government. The government is aware of these individuals. They just respect, they just let it go. So instead of staying like detention, for example, they would just not do anything and let people fix the issue with them individually. So there's so many things that can do. Our community still suffer a lot through wars and genocides. Our temple, our Buddhist community can be a filling gap between our community and the institution. So this is what I'm seeing, that we have the space to do this. So this is a good opportunity for us to really open up. Thank you.
Thank you, Marlai. And we'll come back and ask you some further questions in detail. I'd like to introduce a third presenter, who is a juggler of microphones. This is Sarwang Parikh. Sarwang is a psychotherapist in the Bay Area, and he's working primarily with youth and people of color. He's wearing his Buddhist Peace Fellowship t-shirt. He serves, I've got a laugh, that's interesting. He serves on the board of Buddhist Peace Fellowship, and Sarwang also teaches mindfulness in the schools, in organizations, and he's focusing on fostering social emotional wellness. He's a founding team member of the Bay Area mindfulness nonprofit Seeds of Awareness, and he's a community teacher and Sangha member at the East Bay Meditation Center. So we'd love to hear from you. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Alan. Thank you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me back there? Great. I think so. Yeah, thank you so much for both of you all to introduce where you're coming from and the roots of this lineage and this connection. I really bow to the struggles and representation that brings into this context. I feel so privileged to get to represent so many beautiful gems and vehicles of mindfulness in these traditions here, through Buddhist Peace Fellowship, which I'll speak more primarily about what we get to do within that container, seeds of awareness, which brings in this social emotional awareness and healing into schools, into communities, through therapy and counseling, and this beautiful urban refuge and retreat space that's here, East Bay Meditation Center, that is one of the most radical and inclusive spaces I've been able to practice with. So if you're local, I very much recommend going to the heart of Oakland to sit in Sangha there. How many people are familiar, just a raise of hands, with Standing Rock? Just anyone struggles with Standing Rock? Just I want you to reflect on, if you were moved by that struggle, why were you moved? Just consider what moved you within that struggle of Standing Rock. And for those of you that may not have context for that, there was a very particular movement to block what was happening in the devastation of native pathways of land and river for oil pipelines in Dakota. And so one way that we at Buddhist Peace Fellowship connect with Standing Rock, it represents this classic example, this indigenous direct example of being able to harmonize and reharmonize with what is one of our kind of our own precepts of the energies of block, build, and be. And so I'll speak a little bit more about that context in hopes that those energies serve all of us and we can connect with them in our own ways that the Dharma wheel spins within us. And so particularly Standing Rock, it's blocking these energies of harm and injustice, right? And how do we block that within our own society, within our own selves, the perpetuation of violence and harm? And then to build inspiring new pathways, new ways of connecting with community, to reconnect with land, with ourselves, and in service of what is allowing us to really being in alignment with spiritual truth and sacred life, Buddhist or non-Buddhist. How do we connect with the sacredness of our life? And so that's really these energies of block, build, and be that kind of are some of the foundations that Buddhist Peace Fellowship supports movements and people and in many spheres to align with and around as an organizing principle. And it can be applied to really any movement form, from environmental justice to immigration and struggles of migrants all around the world and here, to demilitarization, Black Lives Matter, gender justice that was spoken earlier, right? Like how do we block, how do we build, how do we be inside of that? And you might have your own examples of how you're doing that within your family, within your communities, within this containers that you're inside of. And locally, one way to think about it, one way we reflect is, you've heard this, think global, act local. Yeah. How many people are familiar with West Berkeley Shell Mound? Raise your hand again. Again, another really valuable struggle here that is continues and has celebrations, but continues to be a place where the West Berkeley Shell Mound is like a way of reconnecting with the sacred of the Ohlone people of this land and their ways of honoring burial sites that are really honoring their ancestry. That is, being occupied by us, by folks that weren't really asking permission. Yeah, that came into the space. And so there's this way of how do we build pathways to reconnect with the remembrance of these people that are still here. And so the West Berkeley Shell Mound is another place where Buddhist Peace Fellowship gets to practice within, sitting in relation to help people wake up to what now, if you've been to Emeryville and the Shell Mound, it's a very large consumer space. It's a big mall. It's very different than a burial site that's still right there underneath the earth. So if you're local to that, I invite you to kind of stay vigilant to see how you can support and struggle and connect with that movement, and maybe in places in your own home bases if you're not from the Bay. Another place here is the Sagore Land Trust. And it's a way to really, it's a women's-led, Native Indigenous women's-led place of practice to really help redistribute access to indigenous stewardship of this land in the Bay Area, in the San Francisco Bay Area. So there's a Shumi land tax that you can contribute to. And so it's another way just to contribute. How do we build new ways of connecting to recognize there's systems of injustice that represent how we even get to be in the privilege of these seats that we're in here, me sitting here with this microphone. Like, how do I participate? How do we get to participate? And there's so many beautiful examples of non-Native folks and Buddhist folks separating Native communities. June Yasuda, Louise Dunlap, the Nipazan Moyaji order. There are some leaders that kind of honor this ongoing interweaving, interrelationship, as Thich Nhat Hanh would say, the interbeing of our communities, that our struggles are not separate, that these identities, these aggregates are really just, a way in a lens that can often be divisive. So how do we really connect with these struggles? Just a week ago, on June 22nd, there were Buddhist friends that did a 3-week peace march across Massachusetts to connect and commemorate Native Americans killed by European colonization in that time. And these struggles of colonization, immigration, climate are really still connected. You were speaking about how immigration continues to be such a violent form that we very much are connected to, and many folks here I can recognize that might come from a lot of migration patterns, including myself here. Last week, Japanese American groups protested in Fort Sill in Oklahoma, and it was gaining notoriety because it was used for the Japanese internment camps in World War II. And it's now, that same site is a detainment camp for migrants today, right? Migrant children. So you can see these interconnections of histories, and it's lesser known that in the 1800s, 1886, when that was the same place where Native Americans were held, right? So you can see that these legacies continue here in this really, these karmic bounds of our own social identities. And so how do we recognize within this practice a vehicle to disrupt that, to build something differently? And incarcerating folks for being non-white and not in a dominant form is not new history. It's a deep, deep racial hierarchy. And how much of this is connected to really the impact of climate change, climate justice, that we can see that, again, folks that would be the most vulnerable would be the first folks that are affected by the changes in temperature, the fires that are happening in Sonoma and different parts of California, globally in different places that are much more closer to where water lines will be rising and threatened in that way. Yeah. And then we know that the Buddha taught that these energies of just blocking harm and building new pathways are not enough. It's really, how do we seed this place of being? How do we really become present? Like, I can feel the sense of receptivity from you all right now. It's like this way of allowing our movements to be sustainable by really seeing them through being present with each other, present to what's happening and alive in our communities, and how that can transform things. So to be with the reality of the struggle, that we can work with the goals like we can towards liberation, nibbana, awakening, and yet the reality is like, here's suffering. How do we accept this? Be compassionate with each other inside of this, knowing that awakening is many, many lifetimes ahead, perhaps. And yet here we are still working to be awake with each other as Sangha. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarwang. A couple of things occur to me before I ask some more questions. Just first of all, that Sarwang touched on, the debt that we owe to the Native American ancestors whose land this was. and this, in many ways, it still is. We need to remember them. It's also so important for us to remember and acknowledge that the Dharma that we are practicing was brought to us by teachers from all over Asia. And we have many representatives in the audience, and I know that my teachers and my teachers' teachers have been made that difficult journey because they had passion to plant the seeds of Dharma, and they thought this was going to be fertile ground. And I also recognize we're all here in this room together, but the real challenge is actually to meet outside this room, to be engaged with each other outside this room, to understand about the variety of communities that we have here and we have around the world. When we sat down to lunch this afternoon, I sat down with Pankaj and Marlai, and they had a wonderful conversation about the realities of their communities, the particular human needs that they had, the practices that they may share, the practices that may have been different. And, you know, I know this, I saw my friend Tan Manut, who is one of the, one of the senior monks at the temple that's right down from the block from me at Berkeley Zen Center. And, you know, we've been friends for 20 years or so, but I recognize that hardly anybody from my Berkeley Zen Center community goes down and has any working knowledge or relationship with the monks or the community that's literally 200 feet down the block. And we're all Buddhists, right? That I would say reciprocally, you never see any of won't see the monks coming up to see what are they doing in that Zen center. You know, so we're encapsulated in our communities and maybe going deeply into our traditions from in those respective communities. But sometimes it's really hard to walk down the street and find out what's going on there and find out what might I learn. That's the most important thing. What could I learn there? What can I learn about a culture? What can I learn about a tradition? What can I learn that can open my mind to the Dharma, that could open my mind to the common humanity that we share? And this goes across many lines. It goes across incarcerated, unincarcerated. It goes across racial lines. It goes across ethnic lines. And I'd like to hear from Pankaj. How are you crossing those lines from your community that's here in the United States?
Yeah, Alan. So yeah, definitely we are seeing that we need to kind of reach across to one another. We have to help lend out our hands. And that is what I was talking with Marlai earlier at the lunch table, that please count us in. I know you are trying to see that you are struggling with resources, trying to bring your struggle to the forefront. And I'm doing the same thing. We are trying to bring our struggle to the forefront of the world, and trying to see that the other Buddhist nations, the other people who are practicing Buddhist, other people who believe in these principles of equality, justice, fraternity, will step up and say something about it. But they wouldn't unless they know about it. So that is what we are trying to come, and we need to do and project these problems that, okay, this society, so for example, in India, I need to come out and say the Indian society got the political democracy but they don't have any social or economical democracy. The worth in India is still decided by the birth, which is, as per the Chaturvarnya goes in there. It's still the norm of the day today. All the problems that people talk about in the political structure there, they talk about reservation, which is like affirmative actions here. That is all based on the rights of the people that are born into the privileged society, that they are getting hampered with these kind of policies being implied by the government. So I see it's a very, very difficult problem, and the solution has to come from Buddha's teaching. That a lot of times it is said like Buddha, when people talk about Buddhism, they say peace, loving kindness, metta. Those things come to the forefront. Did Buddha not taught equality? Did he not taught social justice? Did he not taught fraternity? Those things don't come to the forefront. That is the basis of the socially engaged Buddhism. And coming to the point, I just wanted to see that we, at least Ambedkarite Buddhists, the followers of Dr. Ambedkar, who came to this one, we learned about these things from his well-written book called Buddha and his Dhamma. And what Dr. Ambedkar tells there is he classifies as three things in Buddhism. He says something is Dhamma, then something which is not Dhamma, and then third thing he says something which is Saddhamma. So Saddhamma is Dhamma going beyond Dhamma. That is Saddhamma. Very nice, going beyond that. And when he says that a Dhamma to be Saddhamma has to promote or create and must destroy all the barriers between person and person. So we have seen our earlier panels talks about gender equality. We have seen you talking about problems in Cambodia. You have mentioned a lot of problems that I am not even aware of that happened on this land here, where I'm a migrant, I'm a new fellow here, so I kind of come with my own problems here. But if it's not able to promote and destroy those barriers between person and person, then that is not the Saddhamma. That is what Baba Sahib says. Then he says, like, what is Saddhamma? Saddhamma must teach that your worth is not, your work will decide your worth and not your birth. That is how it needs to come up with. Then also he says that the Saddhamma to be, Dhamma to be Saddhamma must promote equality. That is all we are asking for in the socially engaged Buddhism format. One of the solutions that Baba Sahib proposed for a socially engaged Buddhism, that he says, he questions basically, he says, he raises a question that what must have been the motive for Buddha to form a Bhikkhu Sangha? Was he trying to create a perfect person? Or was he trying to create a servant to the society? Buddha says, Charita Bhikkhave Charikam Bahujan Hitai Bahujan Sukhai. So he orders the Bhikkhu Sangha, go for the benefit of the many, go around the world, spread the Dhamma. That's what Buddha is ordering to his Sangha. And Baba Sahib expects the exact same thing out of Bhikkhu Sangha. So that is another resource we were talking about that we need to tap into. The monastic attachments that we have, the monastic ways of life that we have. We expect in our social problem, we are part of the same society. These monastic life, they are, although away from it, they are not aloof from it. They can't be aloof from it. They are dependent on each other. The upasaks, the lay people, and the bhikkhu and bhikkhuni sangha, which are the monastic people, they are dependent on each other. And the social problem that are arising here is going to sooner or later affect them, and they have to work, we have to work with them to create and help it out to eradicate these social problems. And I think doing that work is taking Dhamma to the Saddhamma level. So that is what I am coming from, that is what I wanted to bring up. And these principles that I see are in there in Buddhism, and we are trying to kind of bring it to the forefront that Buddhism has these principles already laid in there. We have to just tap in and see that we are struggling today. Somebody else will be struggling tomorrow. Their problems may be different. Our problems were different. We struggled for almost 1,000 years of untouchability and caste, the bad effect of caste systems throughout India. And it takes us time to come to a conclusion where we see like, okay, we find our solace, we find the path to end those discriminations on a personal level, not on a social level yet in Buddhism. We need to take that to the personal level, to upgrade it to the social level. We need to make it a socially engaged Buddhism. That is what I bring forward to, that is what I am looking forward to. And please accept my inclusion in your struggle, and you do the same way. We just wanted to see that we all each other stand with each other and help solve our problems, put it towards the end.
Thank you, Pankaj. I want to just a plug. I know that they have at the Ambedkar Association table, they have some copies of Dr. Ambedkar's The Buddha and His Dhamma, and you can avail yourself of that. There you go. Marlai, I'm curious, how could we help your community? How could we be of use to it? How could we serve it?
Thank you, Alan. Yes, we are one as a Buddhist community, and this is a good opportunity for us to connect with each other. We have our knowledge, our strength that we can all share, and we also have our weaknesses as well. So this is a good way to get connected and then share our knowledge, share our wisdom, and then take action individually. As for me, the little knowledge that I know about the Dhamma, I know that we're here for a purpose, and that purpose is doing good things to help others. Because we are going to go, and the only thing we can take with us is just our good karma. And what's the use of if we don't take that opportunity and do as much of good karma as we can while we're here? I don't understand why we don't do it. So we have great opportunity to provide the service to the best of our ability, use all our resources. We cannot take anything back with us. So this is a good opportunity. I think it's a connection, great, and resources. It doesn't have to be money, it could be, knowledge, it could be work, it could be a combination of everything, because we need all kinds of things. All of us need that. So a question back to you, how would we stay connected with this large of a community?
That's a really good question. And I don't have the answer quite yet, but I know that the people on the panel, we are now connected. And there are people in the audience, if you want to connect with any of us, just come and talk to us.
Can the global conference committee connect all of us, do you think? Yeah?
That would be great, yeah.
We all agree? We need it? Yes? Yes? Thank you.
Thank you. Sarwang, I'm curious, there's perhaps a distinction or a line that we haven't spoken of that I would love you to speak to if you wish, which has to do with generations and age. I think you're probably younger than I am. Not in my mind. In my mind, I'm still like 24. In my body, no, 71. But what do you see as the creative edge of those differences?
Such a beautiful and salient question, reflection. I'm reminded that, in my migration here to the States when I was 5, my connection to eldership was very much affected. So my connection to grandparents and ancestors became disrupted in that. And so, to reconnect with these streams of this Buddhist practice, with indigenous practices, part of this work for myself has been to reconnect within the intergenerational areas of learning, that there's so much, none of this is new. You know, it's been done, and the struggles have continued forward from the legacies of so many folks that I get to sit here from. And so my remembrance about that is something around learning from the wisdom from folks that have come before me, that are older than me, that have gone through the struggles that I have not yet experienced within this state and context. And just even the history, Pankaj, you were mentioning that your family comes from within the Ambedkar tradition. Within my own Indian Hindu upbringing, like, you know, there's such a wisdom thread there that intergenerationality brings. And then I think I work with young people a lot, and Seeds Awareness works and centers young people and families, and what I continue to discover is that, which is a thing that is existent within a lot of our, a lot of communities I've come in contact with, which include some of the Hindu-dominant Indian traditions, that age also has its hierarchy, and young people are not really held in the same wisdom capacity as eldership would hold. And yet when I'm working within mindfulness in classrooms or with a young person, I am extremely astounded by the level of wisdom and the gems of how quickly their awareness rises. You know, the lotus that's available for them, there's a lot more mud for us as we get aged, is my experience, that we have to come through to rise into some awareness.
But that's where the nutrients are.
It's true. It's true. There's no better or higher, but it's something about learning to, as I've gotten to sit and circle with young people from really young, like 5, 4, 3 years old, to like ask them and be asked such poignant questions, learning how to listen with the same esteem as I would an elder. And what happens in between is such a powerful synergy. There's because in inheritance, that generation is inheriting the future that we're breeding right now. They have to live through the struggles that we're seeding as a community, and all these points of violence that we reflected on.
They also have an inherent instinct or passion for justice.
Yeah, that's really true. And to see so many young people come galvanized in the midst of these struggles right now that we've, just this year alone has been, it's tremendous. They're not asking, they're recognizing and rising up. And so I think what's possible to synergize between all of our intergenerational connections is it's a necessary medicine.
Well, thank you. Our time is almost up, and we've had wonderful representation from Sarwang and Marlai, Pankaj, and what occurs to me is something that my teacher's teacher had this expression, Shunryu Suzuki Roshi. He had an expression that said, to shine one corner of the world, which means if all you can do is just turn your light on and illuminate one corner, that is your work. As wide as that corner can be, that's great. But if you can just shine one corner of the world, if you can just pick up one thread and follow it back to the whole cloth, then to me that is that's a vision that brings forth social justice and the end of suffering that we yearn for. So I hope we will take that to heart, and I hope we will all get to meet and talk about this person to person, group to group. And also I should say that we have a breakout session at 5 o'clock, I believe, what does it say on 5 to 5:30 at Stevens Lounge, which is across the plaza. So with that, thank you, Pankaj, thank you, Marlai, thank you, Sarwang, and thank you to the organizers and to all of you.
Thank you very much. Jai Bhim again.
Thank you.